Okay. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you today. And I want to just start right away by saying thank you so much for spending your time and energy and attention this way. I know there are so many options and choices for really beautiful experiences these days, especially online. So I really appreciate and value you choosing to be here today, especially live. It means a lot to me. So thank you. And it's great to see some familiar faces as I check out who is here, and then some new faces. So if we know each other already, it's great to see you. And if this is our first time meeting, welcome. I'm really excited for this 75 minutes together, and I know it's going to go quickly, so we'll dive right in. Just a very brief introduction for who I am, just for a little context. My name's Brooke McNamara, and I've been writing poetry since I was a little girl, basically as just a really instinctual way to feel at home in this world and kind of make sense of what felt overwhelming to me. And poetry as a practice just has never left. It's kind of gone dormant for seasons here and there, but it always comes back, and it always proves to be this kind of river that leads me straight to the source of who and what I am. So I often say that this is my favorite kind of party, which reveals my nerdiness, my unique brand of nerdiness, but really coming together and talking about poetry, reading poetry, and writing together. And then you add in some meditation and human connection, and I'm on cloud nine. So thanks for being at this party with me. Yeah, I also love meditation truly, with a true love. I think maybe all of us spontaneously meditate since childhood. So I think that's true for me. I think I would spontaneously get absorbed into silence and stillness, especially in nature, even as a child. But in my early 20s, I started to formally meditate and just felt like a fish in water, fish finding water, just like, oh God, finally here's just a place to be fully coherent and plugged in to something very sometimes still and spacious, and sometimes very dynamic and magical and creative. And so I had been writing poetry my whole life, but it wasn't until I started meditating that I really felt like I found my deepest voice, because I got below the level of ego and like, is this poem good enough? And do I sound cool? And all that kind of barbed wire of my mind that I would sometimes get trapped in, like in college when I was working on my poetry thesis. Once I started formally meditating, it's not that went away, but I could sit through it and drop beneath it. And something much more fun and spontaneous and life-giving emerged. So that's really where I teach from these days, is from a really maybe a Zen approach to poetry, but because I practice Zen, that's another thing I'll add, is that I'm an ordained Zen monk with my husband, and we have kids, and I know that that's a paradox, and it's an impossibility that I love to live out, is monk and mother and artist. But all those things combined lead me to want to invite others like you into a place of just really direct expression, kind of straight from the source. And so that's why we're here today, is like, how do we get to that source, and how do we speak straight from that source? And I kind of am in love with the whole process, like the struggle to find it and the relief when we do. and then the beauty of receiving that from others. So we'll get a chance, if you're up for it, to share our writing at the end of this class today, if you want to. So even though this is just a one-off workshop, I like to do just a little container building at the beginning. So I'll just say explicitly that my intention for today is for us to be filled up. This is an introduction to a 10-week course I lead called Summoning the Unseen, which is also poetry and meditation. And my thesis and my belief and my experience is that there is so much unseen support and inspiration always available to me, to us. I just have to pivot a certain way or do something kind of counterintuitive and stop and interrupt my momentum sometimes. But I really experience and really believe that when we take the time and the intentionality to do that, that we can be filled and connected with unseen support and inspiration in a way that we're overflowing, and what we do in the world comes from a place of wholeness and a place of connectedness, and then we're less susceptible to needing to go out and buy shit and, you know, grasp for things. And there's nothing wrong with grasping and buying and all of that, but I just feel like when I'm connected through poetry and meditation, I just have more empowerment to discern what I'm going to do and who I'm going to be in the world. And so that it's kind of an activist stance that I have about this, that if we plug into these resources that are free and abundant, and what I mean by resources is like soul guidance. Like when we get really still, we can either relax into a place where we hear our own self more clearly, or sometimes magically, I've had legitimate ancestors come to me in my meditation, and I have these wild stories I could tell you that some of you have heard already, but guidance comes and strange ideas that end up being so brilliant and loving come. They seem to just be available if we tune. So that's my intention, is that we get a little more filled up without having to spend money, and in a really wholehearted, soulful, and spiritual way. So that's my intention. And I always am reminded of my Zen teacher's definition of intention, that an intention guides our attention. So that's my intention, to guide my attention. And then I welcome all of your personal intentions for being here today. I know we each have unique reasons for showing up for this kind of work, and those are all welcome. So along with an intention for the 75 minutes, I also just have a couple of super simple agreements that I'm going to offer and hope that you'll accept. One is that if you've taken any course with me, you know I always start with this, and I got this from my Zen teacher also, just that we agree to be for ourselves and for each other, just as a baseline foundation of regard and respect and intending our own and each other's best. Is that agreeable to everybody? Cool. So number one, to be for ourselves and each other. Number two, I want to ask that we all agree to take care of our needs. So if you need to go to the bathroom, feel free. If you need to eat something, whatever the needs that arise, that you tend to yourself so that you're well taken care of. Is that agreeable? Cool. This is kind of the mom in me speaking. So alongside with tending to your needs, if you can kind of on the flip side, also rouse your energy and bring your full attention to this hour. Because like I said, I know it's going to slip by quickly. So if we can turn off our ringer, if that's possible, close out other windows on our computer, whatever we might do. Maybe we lengthen our spine a little bit and feel some uprightness. It's whatever is going to bring you fully here so that we can all receive the most from this time together. Is that agreeable? Great. Okay, awesome. And then the last one is, if it's possible, I'd love you to stay till the end. And I know for some of you, you'll have an interruption that you really need to tend to. But if it's possible, I'd love you to stay till the end. Is that good? Okay, great. Awesome. All right, well, let me just pause and take a breath. That was kind of just some foundational stuff. And I want to shift to reading you a quote from Audre Lorde, who is an amazing 20th century American writer, feminist, womanist, librarian, and civil rights activist. She self-described herself as Black lesbian mother, warrior, poet. And she just has so much good writing. And my attention is going to you, Jenna, right now, because you sent me this quote and I have loved it for a long time. And it feels like a good threshold to offer as we step into our time together. So Audre Lorde said, "Poetry is not a luxury. Poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of the light within which we predicate our hopes and dreams towards survival and change, first made into language, then into idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of the light within which we predicate our hopes and dreams towards survival and change. First made into language, then into idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. Poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. The farthest horizons of our hopes and fears are cobbled by our poems, carved from the rock experiences of our daily lives." So she says it better than I ever could. What the point of my work in summoning the unseen is that however we conceive of the unseen, whether for you that is connecting to your somatic intelligence, which can't be seen, but can definitely be felt, or whether for you that is spacious awareness, or God, or an ancestor, or simply like an experience that we feel but have not put into words yet. So that moment when she says, poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. That's what this workshop and the series are all about, is that process of getting quiet and shifting from an active dimension in ourselves to a very receptive part of us that can get so sensitive that we can actually begin to find words for what cannot be put into words. It's like an impossibility. Poetry is an impossibility. That's the thing that is so not frustrating, but life-giving to me. I think that's why it's a lifelong practice, is that it's a constant failure. It's like, I think it was Samuel Beckett said, fail better, fail better. It's these experiences that, yeah, we can't possibly pin down in language, but it's really important to try. And sometimes we can get really close by either directly describing or coming up with a metaphor that rings just right. And I know that when I read a poem from someone else that captures something that I know, but I didn't know that I know, and then they evoke it, they don't tell me, but they evoke it or transmit it, and maybe also tell, I'm so grateful. It's like, yes, thank you for doing that work. You know, it's not very validated, at least in the cultures I've grown up in. But I'm more grateful for people doing that work than most other forms, because there are times in my life when poems have literally saved me at the level of soul and heart. So I just want to offer, before I read a poem, the thing from Audre Lorde was about poetry, but I want to read you a poem before we meditate and we write. But I just wanted to offer you, in case it's useful, you know, I was talking about like writing from the source and how do we do that? And gosh, I majored in poetry for all of my schooling, and it wasn't until I let myself just kind of really experiment for myself that I found 3 ingredients that work for me for writing poetry that is satisfying to me. So I wanted to offer my 3 ingredients that typically, it's not like I willfully use these, but I notice that I do. And I notice that when I use these ingredients as an approach, that it's a much more satisfying process. So I want to offer them to you, and then obviously say, find your own. You know, you can use these, or you can explore and find your own, but it's helpful to notice what are the ways in that work best for us. I know some people I work with, it's to go out in nature, or you know, I can't think of anything else right now. So I'm going to say, for a lot of people, it's to go out in nature. But for me, the 3 are, number 1, I really like to use the raw experience of everyday life. So it's really helpful for me to just look around, especially as a busy mama. What is right here? What is actually happening? And is there something true or beautiful or good or poetic about the raw experience of everyday life? And then I like to add, the second ingredient for me is wholehearted, visceral listening. So if I can somehow get my heart online and my viscera, my whole body, heart, mind, which meditation usually helps with, then usually something more aligned emerges to say about the raw experience of everyday life. Like I could just describe what's happening from my rational mind, and that's one thing, but I feel like the poetry emerges when we start to tap into our intestines and our heart and lungs and hands, you know, and we let the intelligence of our whole body, mind, and heart begin to notice what's really happening right now. So ingredient 1, raw material of everyday life. Ingredient 2, wholehearted, visceral listening. And number 3 is the mind of meditation, which we will dive into together momentarily. The mind of meditation, I feel like I shouldn't say anything about it because it's, you know, what is there to say? It's silence itself. It's receptivity itself. Yeah, maybe I'll just leave it at that. But if I somehow include, and again, it's not a mechanical thing, like I'm going to notice what's happening and use my viscera, but like if I just kind of hold those lightly in my awareness, and if I'm going to write or intending to write, include all those levels of being human, it's really fun, and something surprising often comes out. Yeah, cool. Thanks so much for listening so far. I just see that your attentiveness, and it's so appreciated. This is the most that I'm going to talk, because pretty soon we're going to meditate and write, and then I want to hear from you. So I'll read one poem. I brought 5, but I don't think we have time. I'd rather just read one poem a couple of times. And I want to invite you to listen to it from all those levels that I just named. You can include your ordinary self that just, pays attention to the raw material of everyday life. You can include your body, and if for you start to move while listening to a poem, that's cool. Include your heart, and if you can access spacious awareness or ever-present awareness or the mind of meditation, you can listen from that dimension as well. Okay, so now the question is which poem I'm going to read out of the 3 that I brought. I think I'm going to read a poem by Wendell Berry. Do y'all know Wendell Berry? Yeah, okay, great. I see some clapping. So just a little intro to who he is. He's an American living 87-year-old novelist, poet, essayist, environmental activist, cultural critic, and farmer. And this is a poem of his called How to Be a Poet. And I love this poem, but I do have to say up front that I have 2 small arguments with it, which it feels arrogant to say that because he's such a great poet, but he's a little bit self-deprecating in the first stanza in a way that I don't want to I don't want to invite you to be as self-deprecating. I think he's being humble, but I don't think we need to be that humble. You might see what I mean. And then at a certain point, he's very anti-screens. And so I just want to say yes to getting away from the screen, but also I want to appreciate the fact that we're on one, and it's what's enabling us to do this right now. So those are my 2 small arguments. And with those said, this is the poem that I'm going to choose to read. Okay. I'll read it twice. I'll read it slowly. And again, it's called How to Be a Poet. And he puts in parentheses under the title, to remind myself. So he's writing this to himself. 1, make a place to sit down. Sit down. Be quiet. You must depend upon affection, reading, knowledge, skill, more of each than you have, inspiration, work, growing older, patience. For patience joins time to eternity. Any readers who like your poems doubt their judgment. 2, breathe with unconditional breath the unconditioned air. Shun electric wire. Communicate slowly. Live a 3-dimensioned life. Stay away from screens. Stay away from anything that obscures the place it is in. There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. 3, accept what comes from silence. Make the best of it you can. Of the little words that come out of the silence, like prayers prayed back to the one who prays, make a poem that does not disturb the silence from which it came. So one more time, How to Be a Poet. 1, make a place to sit down. Sit down. Be quiet. You must depend upon affection, reading, knowledge, skill, more of each than you have, inspiration, work, growing older, patience, for patience joins time to eternity. Any readers who like your poems doubt their judgment. 2, breathe with unconditional breath, the unconditioned air. Shun electric wire. Communicate slowly. Live a 3-dimensioned life. Stay away from screens. Stay away from anything that obscures the place it is in. There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. 3, accept what comes from silence. Make the best of it you can. Of the little words that come out of the silence, like prayers prayed back to the one who prays, make a poem that does not disturb the silence from which it came. Okay, I lied. I'm gonna read one more. Because I love that one and it's so beautiful. And it leaves a little taste of hesitancy in me, like I don't want to disturb the silence from which, so I want to read you one that's a little more playful that I think does disturb the silence in a good way, just to give a little balance. Is that all right? Okay, great. So this one is called Sunday, and it's by another contemporary female African-American poet who also teaches English at Salem State University. Her name is January Gill O'Neill. She's wonderful. And this poem's called Sunday. You are the start of the week or the end of it, and according to the Beatles, you creep in like a nun. You're the second full day the kids have been away with their father, the second full day of an empty house. Sunday, I've missed you. I've been sitting in the backyard with a glass of Pinot waiting for your arrival. Did you know the first sweet 100s are turning red in the garden, but the lettuce has grown too bitter to eat? I am looking up at the bluest sky I have ever seen, cerulean blue, a heaven sky no one would ever believe I was under. You are my witness. No day is promised. You are absolution. You are my unwritten to-do list, my dishes in the sink, my brownie breakfast, my braless day. Yeah, so one more time, Sunday by January Gill O'Neill. You are the start of the week or the end of it, and according to the Beatles, you creep in like a nun. You're the second full day the kids have been away with their father, the second full day of an empty house. Sunday, I've missed you. I've been sitting in the backyard with a glass of Pinot waiting for your arrival. Did you know the first sweet 100s are turning red in the garden, but the lettuce has grown too bitter to eat? I am looking up at the bluest sky I have ever seen, cerulean blue, a heaven sky no one would believe I was under. You are my witness. No day is promised. You are absolution. You are my unwritten to-do list, my dishes in the sink, my brownie breakfast, my braless day. So take a moment. If this was a full 2-hour workshop, I would love to hear from you the impact of either of those poems on your body, on your heart, on your mind. But if you want to just close your eyes for a moment, just sense what's the residue or the kind of perfume of having listened to those. And this is our doorway in actually for today into meditation. So you might be already going there into a an interior, inward gaze, quiet settling. And so just follow that. I'll offer a bit more formal cues from my Zen practice, but you can ignore them if you want to lay down instead or sit in a different way. Or maybe you want to move. Actually, that could be your meditation as well. But if you'd like to sit in the Zen way, you can cross your legs or kneel on your shins. Pull the flesh out from under your sitting bones so that you're perched on your sitting bones. And from there, you can feel a long spine. You can place your hands on your thighs or on your belly or on your heart, or you can take the traditional cosmic mudra we use in Zen, where the left hand rests in the right and the thumbs gently touch. And that comes right in front of your low belly. So it's like a little hamburger right in front of your low belly. Yeah, and then just let your gaze soften, gazing downward toward the ground, or you can close your eyes, whatever you prefer. You can feel a little bit of magnetism from the crown of your head up toward the vast sky above, the cerulean blue, as January Gill O'Neill said. And as the crown of your head gently lifts upward, you can feel your sitting bones anchor into the ground below. And your brilliant, intelligent spine between heaven and earth. And if you can feel for softening in the place behind your eyes, soften behind your eyes and soften in your jaw and your tongue and in your shoulders and your belly and your pelvic floor. So your skeleton is holding you upright and your spine is alert and awake. And then there's a simultaneous softening and listening, feeling all the sensations of those poems I read, all the thoughts about them. And letting that all swirl around, but resting as awareness of all of it, resting as awareness of the sensations, awareness of the thoughts. And I'll ring the bell 3 times. We'll sit quietly together for a few minutes, and I'll ring it one more time to complete our meditation. You can gently blink your eyes open. If they were closed, you can sway your spine side to side, or whatever you want to gently transition from meditation. And we're going to go right into some writing. So you can find your pen and paper or open a document on your computer. And excuse me, I'm going to offer 3 prompts, and you're always invited to follow them completely, ignore them completely, or you can start with them and let yourself follow what's most alive. So you can wander completely away from the prompt if you like. And the first one, I will also put these into the chat. You'll have about 4 minutes for each one. Everything today is a little shorter than it is in the workshops for the series because they're 2 hours. So everything's just a little shorter, but hopefully still fruitful. So the first prompt is just, why do I write? And then underneath that reason, why do I write? And then why else do I write? So just a little uncovering of your deepest intention. And again, I'll put this in the chat. So go ahead and follow your impulses for about 4 minutes, and then I'll give you the second prompt. Just about a minute more with this one. Okay, and then letting that one come to completion or a pause, knowing you can come back to this at some point later. And the second prompt is a little bit of perspective taking or identity yoga. So, what I'm curious for you to explore is to locate a tender or vulnerable part of yourself. So, for me, I often think about the part of me that wakes up in the middle of the night worrying. So, however you access this kind of more tender part of yourself, see if you can identify as that part and just let that part freely express itself on paper for a few minutes. And knowing you never have to show this to anyone if you don't want to, but you could answer as that tender or vulnerable or worried or scared or young part of yourself. You could share what's important to you and what do you fear. Just let it express for about 4 minutes. And that prompt is in the chat. So just a few more moments with this one. You can go ahead and bring that one to a pause. Again, knowing you can come back to it. Okay, and so our third and final prompt, we're going to shift perspectives in ourself. So for this one, I'm going to invite you to locate someone in your life who may be alive or may be dead, someone who soothes or loves or guides or inspires you, a sort of guide or protector of sorts. And I want to invite you now to let that guide in your life right through you to the one you were just writing as. So letting the voice of the one who guides and inspires you speak back to the tender one you were just writing as. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So this is part of the summoning the unseen work, is you're going to open yourself to speak as that guide and speak to the fear or the tenderness that you were just identified as. So I'm putting this in the chat as well. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but Crow asked a beautiful question in the chat that if you don't feel that you have someone like this in your life, either alive or dead, I would invite you to imagine and create and make it up, if that's possible. That would be my invitation. Yeah. All right, and going ahead and completing this or bringing it to a pause. Okay, so first I want to say again, thank you, and just offer some praise for doing that work. I know sometimes it flows easily and sometimes it takes a certain kind of attention and effort to summon those voices, and it can be tender and um, challenging sometimes. So I just want to thank you for going there, and I hope that it was useful to you. And at this point in our Summoning the Unseen workshops, we usually get to go into small groups. So everybody gets to either read what they wrote if they want to, or share like, gosh, that was hard, or wow, that felt amazing. Everybody gets a chance to connect and share. And usually people come back from those sharings with radiance in their faces and their eyes. And it's just really beautiful material to get to connect with others about. So I realize it might feel a little bit intimidating, but if anyone is willing to share in the large group, because that's all we have time for today, I'd love to hear something you wrote, or if you'd like to share some reflections about how that was for you, or like anything that you're learning or discovering through this past hour together. And if you'd like to share, there's a little at the bottom, there's a reactions tab, and you can click that, and you can it says raise hand. So you can raise your hand like that. And if that's too complicated, you can just raise your actual hand and I will call on you. Carrie, hi, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
There I am. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I will read what came of the third prompt.
Great.
There are so many flowers. Start with the peony. There is no order of loyalty in flowers, only a sequence as tides tug and release, as the moon revolts and loves us still. There is no betrayal, only giving it all away at the time of blossom, allowing the feed, the rot, for those petals, paper thin, perfect of pigment, will not last longer for all your clenching. Start with the peony and never cease until you do.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Just give that a moment. And I would love to, I have a lot I could say. I would love to hear from anyone else who wants to share how that impacted you. Thank you so much again, Carrie, for being willing to share. Anyone want to share how that landed in you? And you're getting some feedback in the chat. Yeah, stunning and wow. And I don't want to rush you all. I know sometimes it takes a moment to hear something and respond. And so feel free to just sit with it too. That's totally cool. I will say that I love the guidance to start with something. When there's fear or overwhelm, if I'm just given touch, like just a hug or just one thing, I love that you start there with that. Start with the peony. And that's like a theme and variation. You come back to that, it echoes. And there's like a strength. I don't know if it's your spoken voice or if it's in, I'd be curious to just read it, but I think it's also in the written. There's a strength I feel in the command, like start with this, do this. It won't, I can't quite remember, but it was just very, to me, it felt comfortingly directive. So I noticed that, yeah. I also personally got a little teary because peonies were my flower at my wedding with my husband. Anyone else want to reflect to Carrie how that landed in you, or you may want to share?
I'd like to say something about the strength.
Yes, Frances, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't beat what you've said about the strength and the forcefulness of start with the peony. But what made it particularly beautiful is that a peony is a flower, and I associate flowers with short lives and great delicacy and vulnerability, as it were. And yet this flower was given such powerful qualities. So I loved that kind of tension between the quality of flowers and the tension and the energy of her writing and the words,
Yeah.
the structure.
Yeah, thanks for that, Frances. Yeah, and there was a line about like, no matter how hard you hold on, it's not like the peony is a permanent, like Frances is saying, it's not something permanent that's going to save us forever, but it is something beautiful to put our attention on, even as it is so fleeting. Yeah. Thanks, Frances. Thanks, Carrie.
I love the contrast, like the peony as a flower, but then using the petals to rot and using that as fuel to fuel the next flowers. And what the fact that you did it in 4 minutes is unbelievable. It's really very, very powerful.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Carol Ann. I loved that word rot too. Well, yeah, Jenna, go ahead.
I was just going to offer to read what I wrote.
Yes, please, go ahead.
But I didn't want it. Okay.
No.
I'm going to read the third one.
Okay, great.
My dear, rest, please. My love, you are enough. You have done enough. Your striving is noted, but unnecessary. It is the fabric of who you are, both woven from your soul family and stitched painfully, thread by thread, from your dedication, your yearning, your hunger for more. Your attention and willingness to be present to pain and beauty and breath and death. Your desire to create will be your medicine and your remedy. Give it freely, unencumbered, unbound. Stretch yourself gently, softly into the endless universe that is shining back at you as you. Fall softly, slowly into the bed of the earth, allowing her branches to cradle, her leaves to blanket you, and the soft soil to envelop all that you are shedding and mulching into fodder.
Thank you, Jenna. Yeah. Wow. In the chat. Yeah, it is amazing what can come through when we prime ourselves. That's kind of what these workshops are for, is to, it's sort of a response to a lot of students saying like, how do I want to write, I want to meditate, but I just don't do it. And so this is a way to trick ourselves into, once a week you will do it, and we will do the things that get us to a place where sometimes, like in Jenna and Carrie's sharing, sometimes it just flows out and a poem comes out in 5 minutes, or something that's a draft that can be carved down or added to or rearranged later into a poem. So I want to echo the wows to you too. And I also want to say that if you just sat there and didn't write anything, I so still think that it's valuable time and energy spent, because it's not just about what comes out. It's also, for me, writing a poem is as much about me getting changed and rearranged in the process as whatever comes out. Sometimes it's more important how I'm changed by the process of getting still and listening for the poem, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? So if you're having any kind of feeling of like, I didn't have what Carrie and Jenna, like such a fullness come out, I think it's still very valuable that you got still and listened. I always want to do this more, no matter how much time, no matter how long the workshops are, whether they're an hour and a half or hour and 45 or 2 hours. I always want more time, and I can feel that now with you all. I'd love to hear more from each of you, but time is almost up and I want to end right on time. I'm going to put the information for the 10-week series into the chat. There it is. There's a link. There's the info. It's 10 weeks long with an off week in the middle. There's 4 amazing guest teachers, and I always choose the guests based on them having a diverse background from me and each other, and also that they're really nice. I have a bias. I really like to host kind people. So I'll say these 4 are like such amazing. If you read their bios on the course page, you'll see that they're very accomplished and they're equally kind and humble. I'm so excited to have them. And I'd love to have any of you join for this 10-week adventure. I'm curious in the last minute or so if anyone has any questions that I could answer about the 10-week course. Yeah, Frances.
Well, I'm returning, as you know.
Yes.
And,
oh, yay.
It's hard to phrase my question. I tend to write very spontaneously and flowingly, and I got so caught up in some other courses with you just about the issue of, is this poetry?
Mm.
So I wondered if I can just write prose, as it were, and is that okay with you? But it'll be poetic prose.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so fine with me. I have I think maybe in high school, I had a more like old school definition of poetry, but yes. Wow, I have a very open-ended, you could come and paint and I would be like, good for you, you know? Yes, if you want to, yeah.
I just wanted to voice that because I think I got so tangled up in that issue and without talking about it, that it just prevented me really making use of the opportunity.
No, that's absolutely fine. You can come and create in any medium, honestly. I'll be happy to have you. I should say it's more about like the poetic, accessing the poetic through whatever medium. Okay. Thanks for that question, Frances. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Ruby May, it's so great to meet you. I see your hand is up. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you that I could be here. I feel really grateful to be here. I also feel incredibly intimidated to be here because I'm such a beginner. And so my question is like, is your course, could it be something also for someone like me? I'm coming not so much because I want to write something that I can show people, but I want to think poetically. I want to live poetically. It's part of this process of like dismantling how capitalism lives inside me. And for me, poetry is like a medicine for that. Yeah. But I'm a beginner, so I'm curious what you would say to that.
I would say you're the perfect person for the course. And again, there's plenty of like more academic approaches out there in other courses. And I've even taken some like, oh, I should polish up my technique. And I've gotten a lot from them, but I often come out feeling like, oh, shoot, that took me further away from my honest voice. And so this course is about beginner, intermediate, advanced, however you identify, whether you do not identify as a poet or a writer, but you still want to come and like think and be poetic. Yes, I can't say it enough. And I'll say for anyone who's taken the course who's back here in this workshop, you'll know that there's all kinds of people. And that's, I mean, I just got chills because that's part of what's really beautiful, is that it's all kinds of people just tuning to the heart and finding more honest ways and poetic ways to perceive and express. So I think you're a perfect person to join. I'd be honored to have you.
Thank you.
I'll say we're out of time. Henrik, can you ask super quick? And I'm only asking that of you because I know you.
Sure. I just had a special request, not so much about the course, but I like when you read the poems. And I have a special request if you could like have recorded readings of poems you like on a playlist.
I love that idea.
That you can listen to, because I like sometimes you like to read the poem like in front of you, and some you just like to listen to it and wander in the woods.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want a combination, like looking at pictures and having a reading, or looking at the poem and hearing the reading.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks for that request. I will definitely consider it. Thanks, Henrik.
Great. Thank
All right,
you.
I want to let you all go. You'll get an email later today with a recording of this call and written forms of the poems and quotes that I read. And I just want to end quickly by dedicating them. This is a Buddhist practice to just dedicate the merit of our time together. So if you want to join your hands in prayer or whatever gesture you want to take, and I just want to pray that whatever benefit we cultivated, all the good energy and intention and heartfulness, that it may benefit each of us and all of our loved ones and all beings everywhere. Thank you all so much. Have a beautiful day, and I hope we stay in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. You can unmute and say goodbye if you'd like.
That's
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
everyone.